What's up, guys? Andy here with Pittsburgh Weiss Schwartz. Today we're coming at you with a multi-deck tech for Tokyo Revengers. We got 3 of them here for you, and we're going to be covering some of the less talked about archetypes. The Split Soul deck has been really hot recently, but I wanted to go over the other very good, very solid archetypes that the set has access to that no one's really covered. I'm joined today with Carmen, as usual. And yeah, let's just jump right into it with the first deck here. First up, we got 8 Choice. This deck kind of plays very similarly to 8 Choice Slime. You have similar memory conditions you're trying to hit as Slime, and then your finisher is like a multi-attack, like comes into play, heals, then goes to memory, summon another one, heal, attack, go to memory, summon. So you get a whole bunch of attacks and a whole bunch of heals for a pretty affordable cost at the top end. Very solid finisher. But just jumping right into the level 0s here, we're probably going to be spending a little bit more time on level 0s in this deck than the other 2, because there are a lot of common denominators between the different builds that we'll be seeing in every deck. So the first one of these is I'll Protect You Hina, which is the Ricky in the set. So on play, you can pay 1 clock yourself and then search your deck for a level 1 or lower character. And then it has a very handy second effect that pairs with it. So also when this is played from the field, you can choose to return 2 characters from your waiting room back to your deck and then give 2,000 power for the turn to itself. Now the 2,000 power is hardly ever going to be relevant. I mean, maybe early on in the game you can like trade with a 3,500, but the real benefit of this effect is so that this Ricky can hit both zones essentially. So if the card you want to search is in your deck, you just do the Ricky effect like normal and search the card you want. But if the card so happens to be in your waiting room, you can shuffle it back into your deck and then search it out of your deck. So you have access to whatever you'd be searching with this at any time, regardless of your deck state, which is nice. A little unfortunate, it can only grab level 1s, but it definitely does the job we need to do. And it's probably the best yellow fix for the set in general in the other builds. Moving on, we got 4 copies of Becoming a Man That's Fitting Takamichi. This is the other big level 0 that we're going to be seeing a lot of in every Tokyo Revengers build, pretty much. He gets 2,500 power and an extra level if you have 1 or less other characters. So if it's just him and 1 other character, he is 4,000 level 1. So very good plussing level 0. And when he gets reversed in battle, if you have 2 or less cards in your memory, you can send him to your memory for free. So not only is this the card that you always want to see in your opening hand, just because it's going to be plussing for you, hopefully, because he's big and plus level, but it's just free memory compression. Like throughout the game, he retains his usefulness a little bit better than other just big oversized level 0s, in the sense that you can at least crash him in and get a free point of memory compression. So those 1 to 2 points of memory compression here or there seems a little bit irrelevant maybe at first glance, but when you're getting it absolutely for free on a card that you absolutely would like be running anyways, it is a very practical and pretty OP effect, actually, when the whole name of the game is compression. Next up, getting to our Brainstormer. In this deck, we're using Special Person Emma. This is the top check 3 Brainstorm. So whenever for each climax you hit, you get to look at up to 3 cards from the top of your deck and take any of those 3 cards, add to your hand, and send the rest to waiting room. And when you play your climax, you can choose one of your characters and give them the effect. When you attack with it, you get to look at 2 cards from the top of your deck, choose 1 card from among them, pop your deck, and the rest go to waiting room. So when you play the climax, you just get to choose one of your characters and choose your trigger effect to it, which is really nice. If you want to trigger a climax, in this deck's case, that would be a choice, so that you could either get an extra stock or an extra hand. You can try to like help facilitate that and set it up. Or if you're trying to run clean, can make sure you have a clean card on top and send any climaxes to the waiting room before the attack. Moving on, we got 2 copies of the You Always Turn Up Suddenly Hina. This card synergizes specifically with the 8 Choice deck. As we'll see, a lot of the cards in the 8 Choice deck are kind of locked to just being usable in the 8 Choice deck, but they are pretty good payoff cards for the archetype. So this level 0 is going to give 500 power to all of our other characters on our turn only. And then it has 2 other act abilities. You can rest it to take a Clover Necklace event or a Revenge character in your waiting room and get it under this as a marker. And then on a future turn, you can pay 1 and rest the Hina to return the marker from under it to your hand. So basically, you can salvage whatever you want from your waiting room with this card once every 2 turns. 1 turn to put the card underneath it as a marker, and then use the effect again next turn to add that marker to your hand. Really solid, just plussing effect in general. It can be kind of annoying if you're playing against a deck with wind triggers, because you put the marker under this, then they spin this card away, and the marker drops back off, and it will take another turn to set it up. But much much like Slime, how they have their
Potion
the
seller,
potion
yeah.
Rimuru that will like every turn give you a resource. And actually, I'm pretty sure the 8-choice Slime deck also has a card kind of like this, where every other turn you'll like add a card to your hand.
Yeah, once you accrue a certain amount of markers, you can, like, pop it to add a card from grave.
Yeah, but this one comes online at level 0 and is completely under your control. You don't have to like deal with like canceling damage or anything to get markers. You just tap it and put the card under it. So nice card to open with to help you contest board at level 0 and just start getting those markers rolling. Next card here, we have 2 copies of this Mucho level 0. He is the what's her name, Carmen? The one, Rico,
yeah.
Rico effect from Love Life Sunshine, where when you play him, you discard a card from your hand, and then you reveal the top card of your deck, check the level of that card, and then salvage any character in a waiting room of that level or lower. This is a very handy card to have alongside with the choice triggers. One of the big drawbacks of running an 8-choice deck is that you have a really versatile and strong plussing trigger, either giving you stock or hand, but you're limited to only cards with a soul icon on them. So this card can kind of help with that in the situations where if we just have a random, if the card we want is not a higher level card with a soul on it, right? We can salvage the card with the soul, with the choice trigger, and then on our next turn play this Mucho and trade that card with the soul in for anything else. If that makes sense. It basically just helps out with the fact that choice can only grab certain cards, and then this helps us turn the card that choice adds into any card we want if we need the greater selection there. And it's just a good card in general, just be able to help fix your hand and get some trigger knowledge throughout the game. Next, we're running 2 copies of 7th Elementary Mikey. When you play him, he gets 1,000 power for the turn. 1,000 equals the number of characters your opponent has times 1,000. So he can get, I guess, up to 5,000 extra power, which is somewhat relevant, I guess. He can contest board better than most other level 0s at level 1. So you might actually be able to have him on the field as a shield, so you're not getting hit for open lanes on the opponent's swing back. And he also has the other effect where when you play him, you can block a revenge character from your hand to look at the top 5 cards of your deck for any character. So helps you get through your first deck and help hand fix yourself into your level 1 combo, which has some strict requirements that you need to meet a little bit early in the game. So a very nice card to have to help hand fix you in this choice deck. And going on to the next line here, we had to use 2 lines for the level 0s in this one. There's a lot of them in this deck, and a lot of 1-on-2 so we have 20 level 0s in this deck. 1 copy of the Festival Draken and Mikey, which is the Climax swap. 1 copy of the Drake and Mikey and Takamichi, which is a very interesting card that Tokyo Revengers has. It is a drop salvage. It's a drop salvage on play and on death. So, but he has no other effects. But it's a very interesting profile. So you can get 2 filters off of this, and you're getting a lot of stock or a lot of hand with your choice triggers, and want to either pay out stuff you're triggering or to swap stuff around in your hand. It is a very useful card for that. And rounding out level 0s, we got 1 copy of the Revenge Takamichi. This is useful in cases where you just need like 1 extra stock to be able to go off with your combo at the end of the game, as he can generate a stock for you for free when you play him by clocking yourself. And that's it for level 0s. Lots and lots of level 0s in this deck, but this ensures that we always get a really hot start with the deck and can start generating a lot of stock early with the deck. Moving on to level 1 here, we have 4 copies of the Takamichi and Ina level 1 combo. And if you're a fan of Data Live, you're going to really love this combo. This is probably, I would say on paper, probably one of the, if not the strongest level 1 combos we have in English right now, disregarding any sort of like conditions you need to meet along the way. It is a very, very good combo, and is one of the big payoff cards for going into 8-choice with Tokyo Revengers. So what it does is you have 2 or more other characters on the field, so pretty much always it is going to be sitting at 6,000 power. So it's pretty big on the way back, so if you choose to run backups, you might be able to actually defend this and get an extra turn with it. And at the very least, you're probably not going to have to trade with your opponent's other level 1s and can get over what you need to. And then the Climax combo is when you play the choice Climax to your field, on Climax placement, you have to resonate and reveal a copy of the level 3 Takamichi from your hand. And when you resonate with that, you look at 2 cards from the top of your deck and can take any characters or clover necklaces from among those to your hand, and then the rest would go to waiting room. So this is very much like the Kotori combo from Data Live, but it's actually quite a bit better in the sense that better timing with it, in the sense that it's on climax placement as opposed to on attack. And the fact that it doesn't whiff like Kotori can sometimes. Kotori reveals the cards one at a time and then adds them to your hand. So if you like hit a climax, it just stops immediately, where this looks at both at the same time and then adds them to your hand. So even if the climax is the first card, you can still have a chance to get the plus with it. So when you drop this combo at level 1, you're definitely refilling your entire hand pretty much if you get multiples of these off. But for being such a good combo, the drawback of having to have the Takamichi level 3 in your hand that early in the game is definitely kind of annoying, considering you generally want to be mulliganing level 3s in White Schwartz for your lower level cards, and the fact that the Takamichi finisher in general is not a card that you really need a lot of copies of your hand to go off with. What you're actually trying to set up at the end of the game is having one Takamichi in your hand and then the rest of them in your waiting room in stock. So you kind of have to sculpt very early for a card that you don't that's going to clog your hand for the whole game and that you don't really want multiples of in your hand. But we have some built-in ways to help ensure that we get this card in our hand early, so we can always fire off our level 1 combo. And the raw plussing power of the level 1 combo more than makes up for it. Continuing with some auxiliary level 1s here, we have Bathhouse Buddies Mikey. When you play him, you reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a revenge character, you choose a character on your opponent's center stage and give it minus 6,000 power for the turn. So it gives us a little bit of trigger knowledge, and is a good way to shrink some of our opponent's stuff that might be too big for us to reverse otherwise. Maybe even flat out killing a card and opening up a lane for ourselves. Can be a nice card to have versus standby decks or anything else that's presenting you a big board. And speaking of dealing with standby decks, we have one copy of the Adachi, which, if it gets reversed by your opponent's higher level character, can send that character to your opponent's stock, and then they send a bottom stock to the waiting room. And he also has the same effect that the level 0 Takamichi has, where if he gets reversed and you have 2 or less memory, he can go to your memory for free. So another handy way to get a piece of an extra 3 point of memory compression if you so want it.
This card's really funny, this event. The fact that the Clover necklace is a yellow pendant and it is a yellow necklace, that's really funny. If you don't know the story behind this profile, if you're newer to Weiss, you might know it as Mask. This 1/1 event here that we're playing 4 of. The original printing of this was in Nisekoi, and it was called Yellow Pendant, and this is also a yellow necklace. There's some pretty funny coinking, but card's pretty good in the deck as well. Helps you pay out nice, trigger choices, like just being a tossed stock out, and obviously it helps you get your Takamichi so that you can resonate.
Yeah, definitely. Helps you get the Takamichi early on for your resonate. It's nice that your level 1 combo can add this to your hand off the level 1 combo. And yeah, just free memory compression throughout the game. It's a very handy card. And another thing that kind of makes this deck have a similar playstyle, similar feel to Slime, just using one of Slime's key cards in this deck as well. Then going on to level 2s here, we have 2 copies of this Triggered Nauta, and that is it. He is a global level assist to your field so long as you have experience 3. So that means that you have combined levels of 3 in your level zone. So you can throw in level 3 over there early on. Not one of your Takamichis, but maybe something else. Or some other level 2s or 1s along the way. But this guy's in the deck primarily because he needs to be on the field for the finisher combo to work. It's not like we're really trying to tank up big on field with this deck with any of our early plays or anything, but this card is needed for the level 3 Takamichi combo to function. You cannot do the combo if you do not have him on the field, but we have very good access to this card with the Clover Necklace events and our 8 choice triggers in our deck. We should have no trouble getting this card online by the end of the game. Just something you have to keep in mind. Going on to some early plays, we have 3 copies of the Special Person Hina. You can early play it if you have a full field, so 4 other characters on your field. And it's a very interesting early play condition here too, or healing effect on it. It is a heal to stock, but unlike most other conventional heal to stock healers where you'll discard a card from your hand, this actually has you sacrifice a card on your field, which is actually pretty handy if you want to go ahead and play multiples of these Hinas in the same turn. In the sense that you have a full 4 cards on field, you play the Hina, you sacrifice one of your less important characters, heal, and then since you open up a spot on your field, you can now early play another Hina. So they're very good in multiples to just drop down a whole bunch of healers all at once, since they naturally open up a slot to be able to play another one. So you don't have to overplay anything. And it helps us conserve our stock for later as well. So this is the early play that most Tokyo Revengers decks will run. Then onto the actual level 3s of the deck, we have the finisher combo here, the Takamichi Courage combo. He heals when he comes into play, either from your hand or when he comes in out of your waiting room. And then Climax combo, at the end of his attack, if you have Time Leap on your Climax zone and you have the level 2 Nauta in your back row, you pay 2 stock, discard 2 cards from your hand, and send this Takamichi to your memory to summon another Takamichi from your waiting room. So most of the time, you're going to be wanting to be summoning another copy of himself, which then lets you do the combo again. Comes into play, heals for you. You can attack with the fresh Takamichi, use his Climax combo, pay 2, discard 2, summon another one from your waiting room, attack with it again. But it is important to note also that he summons any Takamichi from your waiting room. So when you get to like the end of the combo, if you have no more stock to be able to like support going for another level 3 Takamichi, like if you don't have the resources to set up another big Takamichi and go for like a pay 2, discard 2 to summon play, you can always just grab one of your lower level Takamichi cards to use as the final attack, which the deck has plenty of, from the red level 0 to your level 1 combo. I always forget that the level 1 combo is a Takamichi because he has black hair in that picture, but you have tons of Takamichi characters in your deck. So I think the maximum number of attacks you could get theoretically is what? You'd have 3 normal attacks.
5 in the one lane. Like every Takamichi attacks and then thing, but I think you run out of hand.
You could have a maximum of 7 attacks if you could have enough hand. I'm not sure if
I don't think it's possible unless you trigger the choices and you take it all to hand, which like can happen. You're attacking a lot of times, so it's possible that you like can extend a whole entire attack by your climax triggers. So just something to think about. It's a lot of attacks. I think typically with this one, because it's pay 2, ditch 2, and this card doesn't refund you, you're probably getting 3 attacks in this lane plus your other 2, so it's usually probably 5 to 6, just because of the hand cost.
It is definitely very handy though that you can grab any Takamichi. So when you're getting low on stock in hand, you could just throw out like a level 0 or
gives you some damage modulation too.
Combo, yeah.
You can summon like the next card that's also a Takamichi if you need another 2 soul beater, or you can summon any of your 1 soul card.
Definitely a very good finisher combo. Very explosive and generally efficient finisher that gives you a lot of heals, an ability to modulate damage on your kill turn. Just you gotta watch out for like memory kick counters and stuff like that.
That's why you got the Mikey for. Drink 6k is pretty good for playing around memory kick.
That's very true, very true. And then the last card here in this deck is the back row Takamichi assist, which gives 2,000 power to everything in front of it, and an encore effect as well. And also on play, you get to bounce one of your opponent's characters and look at the top 3 cards of your deck and rearrange them. Again, this is another way like we can help play around memory kick counters just by straight up winding a card off of our opponent's field and giving ourselves an open lane to attack in, so they can't have the ability to counter in that lane. And just helps our Takamichis get bigger so they can get over whatever they need to, so memory kick won't be an issue. But anyways, that is it for the 8 choice deck. Do you have any closing thoughts on this one, Carmen?
No, I think I was able to get in what I wanted to. The Mikey's really helpful for playing around memory kick counter, as well as the bounce. Like, because Takamichi, because of the way this combo works, doesn't like conventionally restand, you don't have to worry too much about swinging into open lanes if swinging 4s is what you want to do. The only thing here, Andy, and you played this deck quite a bit, for an 8 choice deck, the trigger count seems woefully pretty low. Like, and it doesn't seem like there's any really good ways to add triggers to the deck. Adding triggers to the deck seems hard. Just with my very limited knowledge of the TRV card pool. Has that like come up too much? I mean, like, I feel like you might lose out on a trigger every once in a while, but it's probably fine with like, what is this? 7, 9, 11, 12 triggers?
Well, I think that is a concern of mine when playing the deck. This is actually a deck list that I copied off of Encore decks. I usually, if I ever copy a list and present it, I will always shout out the person. This was a deck by Anonymous on Encore decks. If this is your deck and you want to like say something in the comments, maybe you can give your insight to that. But overall, the deck, this was like the best looking 8 choice deck I found, so I kind of went off with this as a template. Through actual gameplay, I didn't really have a ton of issues with not having choice targets. And again, you really don't mind like sending your level 3 Takamichis to your stocks. Again, you're kind of like paying them out to your waiting room, then summoning them from your waiting room. So that can be fine. And it's a good excuse to be able to like take the level 2 Nauta into your hand, because you need to have him for the combo. So it lets you kind of like use your Clover necklaces to search other pieces. But if you did want to up the soul count in this deck to have some more choice targets, I think the very easy way you could do it is cut some of the level zeros. There's a whopping 20 level zeros in here, and you could very easily cut 2 or 3 of them for extra cards.
Some higher
and
level
souls on
cards
them.
too.
Yeah, whether they're like there's like a level 2 Leafa counter you could run. There's a level 1 counter with a soul you could run. Run another Adachi. Maybe another early play. You could definitely trim a couple spots at level 0 pretty easily to add a couple more soul triggers to the deck. If that would make you feel more comfortable.
All right. Well, guess we can jump to 8 standby here. I can run down this one
Yeah,
card by
sure.
card and then jump in. So we got the Hinariki again. We already talked about it. We already have the Takamichi again showing up. Like Andy said, gonna spend the most time in level 0 on the first one since a lot of these cards are gonna pop up again. And here we got a new one. We got this Bloody Halloween Kazutora and Mikey. This blue card. This card's a double filter. It's an on-play reveal top. That's an event or a character. You can draw it in a discard console. And then as long as you have 2 or more other characters when you play it, you can also draw ditch. So this is like your classic standby double filter on a stick when you're running really heavy cards. Especially, even though we have the Takamichi in this deck, this 4K level 1 at level 0, we still want to get our 1/1s out. Like level 0 is an entire like fourth of the game. You don't want to like not be doing your standby game plan when you're 8 standby when you're at 0. So double filters like this are really powerful. We're just making sure we can throw our 1/1s in grave to increase the chances that we cancel. You can also order this in such a way where you are more likely to draw a climax, or you basically prevent yourself from drawing a standby. If you can dig for a trigger by like revealing top first and then not doing the draw ditch, or if you want the climax in your hand, you can like draw a ditch first, then reveal the top. So it depends what you want to do. You can order it in such a way so that you're always able to either dig for a trigger or dig to put a climax into your hand, whichever one you need at that time. Because this standby deck does have some pretty good reasons to play their standbys from hand. 2 of the Mitsuya Brainstorm. It's a self-tap salvage Brainstorm. Then it also has a cool resonate effect. We can resonate the level 3 Mikey, the finisher down here, to give 2 of our characters 500 power, just a little bit of extra offensive buff, or a card that will sit on our board all game anyway. 2 of the Emma, the check 3. Again, card's really good for just adding like a really good deck speed patch to any Tokyo Avengers deck. Notably, you don't have like a lot of mill in 8 standby here. You're like processing 2 cards with the draw ditch, like brainstorming with this, but like this is like honestly mostly a deck speed and fill your grave card in this deck, as opposed to the other decks where it's like your primary plussing brainstorm. So that's pretty much how you're going to use the Emma here. And then again, we got the climax swap. And this is a new card, the Let's Split Halves. So this is one of the climax play bounce back cards. It gives us soul, but on play also gives power. So like these are usually a lot better when they give just power, because offensive power is important to always make sure that you're winning boards, so then you can, challenge on defense. But this one, it gives both 1,000 power and play a climax, give a soul. So it can give you a big swing, set up a side, something like that. Only 1 copy if it's a matchup where you think you need that constant pump, like in a standby matchup. You just Ricky for it and you sit on it the rest of the game, because you don't always need these kinds of cards. You're pretty comfortable cycling in and out your back row. Any thoughts on the level 0, Andy, otherwise?
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point with the Bloody Halloween, the blue level 0, the double filter. It's a very good way to like help set up standbys at level 0. And you mentioned with like the 4K Takamichi, even though this card will get weaker if you start standbying stuff out and filling your field, it still probably is worth to do that. Don't get lost in the sauce with the Takamichi. The beautiful thing about that card is, it's a 4K level 1 in the games where you don't hit your standby, and in the games where you do hit your standby, it swings for you and then it goes to memory when it dies. So you don't really mind if it gets run over anyway. But I would think the play would be, don't forego setting up your level 1 standby fields. Don't choose to like not play a standby at level 0 because you want the Takamichi to contest board, when the important thing is like actually setting up your level 1s.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that, Carmen?
Yeah, for sure. It's just a card that's really good on your like literal first turn, and then after that, you don't really care if it goes to memory. It did its job. It swung again, Mm-hmm. Moving into level 1s, we got the 1/1 Draken. This is pretty similar to the 3/2 Nino, but it's kind of inverted. 3-2 Nino is a finisher where it has the effect where it gains the standby trigger when you have a specific standby in your climax zone. Unfortunately for Draken, he doesn't have any combo or any other effect stapled with that, so it's a little worse, but I mean, this is still a really powerful effect. Adding 4 standby triggers to your deck to be effectively quote-unquote 12 standby. That means in the early game, if this is one of the ones you have in your hand, you want to, or like you see this card on top, maybe you want to draw it to play it from your hand instead, that you increase the chance that you're able to trigger additional standby effects by triggering more 1/1s. But he has a really weird power condition, 5 or less stock to get 4k power and hand encore. So if you have 6 stock or more, he not only loses the power, but also loses the encore. So this is going to drop off a lot faster than in maybe other standby decks. So this is definitely going to be like, this is probably a card that you level, especially because you need so much stock for the Mikey in the end game. It's really good for ramping your standby, going into your like 0-1 and right from there. But after that, you probably want to retire it.
You might also since you're adding extra standbys to your deck by each additional copy of himself, you're going to be triggering more standbys on average. So by the point in the game where he's starting to lose power from his own effect,
you can probably just replace
standbys to overplay him anyways, and that's not even necessarily a bad thing, because then he falls off, goes to graveyard, and then on your next deck he shuffles back in to be a standby trigger for you once again.
Yeah, and that's only when you have this specific standby in your climax zone. Supporting him as an additional 1/1, we're playing 6. It's pretty common for standby decks these days. It is a 1/1 4500, and if the character facing this card is cost 0, he gets a level and 3500 power. So he can't be bombed by red bombs. Can be anti-changed, which is kind of funny. If there's a cost 0 character in front of him, but that would require your opponent to put it, willingly in front of it, and then other stuff to happen, which doesn't really matter. But it has a really cool second effect where it's a field counter, where when your other character is frontal attacked, you can sacrifice this to give that character 2500 power. So basically in the later game, when you you want those backup likes or whatever, and you see that there's no backups in the deck outside of the counter all the way to level 3, you're able to put this on the board in the later game and use that to protect your 2/2s or 3/2s that you have down on the board, as opposed to using an actual counter. And then if you don't have to use the counter, your opponent just doesn't bother challenging you, or they can't or something like that, then you have a beater to attack with again. So it's a pretty cool card to be able to play, especially into 1k1 decks. Into standby decks it's not as good, you're going to be using it mostly as a counter, but into 1k1 decks where they really can't clear this card till level 2, where it's just a level 2 8k, can be pretty nasty. And the field counter is pretty good too. So a very unique card to mess with.
Yeah, in those matchups where you're playing against 1k1 decks, this probably is your primary standby target that you'd be going for early on.
Yeah, if you can, you want to put this one out first. Similar to the 1/1 unreversible Nino and Quince. You want to slam that down and just get your free pluses until 2. Speaking of level 2, our only level 2s are 2/2. This Smiley here. You have 2 or more other characters, he gets 3k, so he's 9k, and he has Twin Drive, and then he has Inherent Hand Encore. So you're just going to basically use this to, not only clean your stock as you trigger standbys, but also trigger more standbys. So you're going to try to use him to snowball. Sort of playing off that he has lower power, and you're not playing a lot of counters and stuff like that to protect your board. You just Hand Encore this and then ramp your board back out, which, kind of how a lot of these decks have been playing. I mean, Mishoku can do it, but they also have the defensive counters, but you can do a similar thing where you just, Twin Drive out a whole new board.
Yeah, and most of your power in 8 standby Revengers is going to be coming from your board. Not so much giving yourself a boost with a backup, but rather just setting up a very big board with everything giving power to everything else, sort of.
Mm-hmm. The Hina early play that we talked about moving into level 3s, this card's really strong in a defensive deck because of the way the sack works. You might think, like Andy said, it's at first look, it's just the same, but it's really not, especially when you're going to play a standby. This card can open up a board position for you to standby into, which is really sick. So you're not just standbying over a level 0. You can sack a level 0 after you brainstorm or something like that, then standby into that position, which is really sick. Some extra utility there.
Yeah, I always hate playing 4 or more field early play conditions in a standby deck, because that means you're intentionally filling up your board, and then if you trigger a standby, you're going to have to overplay something with it. which can sometimes, not feel great because you're not really getting your plus off of it if you think of it that way, if you're overplaying something else.
Yeah.
But the fact that this just naturally will allow you to comes down and then opens up a slot on your field for you to then play a standby or trigger a standby and put a card into that lane. It's just a very nice way to upgrade your back row as the game goes on, or if you still have one of those Drakens sitting around from level 1 that is no longer getting power condition or whatever, just sacrifice them, get some free stock. And I mean, if you're going to be sacrificing the card, overplaying the card on your field anyway, it's much better to have an early play that's making you sacrifice from field than discard from hand, right?
Yeah, it just gives you more utility, especially when you're slamming standbys. Moving into your rest of your level 3s, we got the Draken here, this 3/2. It's actually an early play that, becoming a man that's fitting, this level 0 that we play. You have 2 or more of these in your memory, which is the maximum that I believe you can hit, or no, you can hit 3.
You can get up to 3,
it's 2 or less, yeah. So as long as you have 2 or more in your memory, you can actually early play him from your hand. He doesn't have an on-play effect, but he is a global 15 as long as he's in the front row. So that's a really cool thing that this deck can do that other 8 standby decks can't, whereas if you need that sort of power bump on turn, you can't risk gambling to trigger a standby mid-attack. You can just play this card from your hand at level 2, get a big 2-soul beater, and also pump up the rest of your board, which is definitely like a cool niche that Tokyo Revengers have that other ones do not.
He's definitely a good auxiliary standby target too, in the sense that if you swing with your weak lane first and then on your next attack you trigger a standby, he's a great way to upgrade one of your weaker cards that already swung, because
you'll just make your whole board bigger.
You want
to talk about the rest of the level 3s before I get to Mikey? We see the back row again. The fact that this card also has you literally can't get reversed if you don't want to by paying 1 and ditching 1. You can give any of the characters in front of this that ability where they just cannot get reversed. Really good for a standby deck, obviously. It means that you always keep your cards around. Your cards can't be removed off the board by those on reverse, get sent to a different zone effects like the Quince back row or something like that, because they can't get reversed at all. And of course you keep your card, which is pretty nice. And then
it can stop your opponent's combos as well.
Yeah, if they have a on reverse finisher, and you can do that, right at when the card's frontal attacked. So you can delay that decision until it's relevant or not relevant. We're playing one of the Chifuyu, the stock swap. It is on play, draw 2, ditch 2, stock top. It's one of the only ways that you have to dig for a climax in the set at all, actually. So that's a reason it's in the deck, being able to dig into a climax that maybe we can swap into our right one or something like that. And then of course it has on attack pay 3 stock swap. The on attack pay 3 stock swaps, it sounds like really gross and overcosted when you have these level 3s, but on attack stock swap can be a blowout effect, so definitely keep that in mind. But it is a little bit harder to use than even a traditional level 3 stock swap. And then really cool, this counter. So this is like a money counter on crack. So this Takamichi event, it is a 3/4 backup. You can choose 2 cards in your hand and ditch them. And as long as you do, choose 1 character in battle and then deal X damage to your opponent, and that character gets the following ability at the end of turn. This card cannot deal damage to a player, and X is equal to that character's soul. So when your opponent swings into you, choose their character, it can't do damage. So if there's any end of attack or on reverse burn, or including the attack, you don't take it, and you burn your opponent back for however much they swung into you for. So that's a lot of stock. We're going to want to sit on a lot of stock to either use this or use our Mikey finisher. So we have just sort of like a way to win on our opponent's turn, as well as a pretty good finisher ourselves in the Mikey. So the Mikey is an on-play heal. He has a climax combo with Resonate, where you have to resonate with a copy of himself, as well as paying 3 and ditching 1. So at the end of this card's attack, as long as you have the standby, you can look at up to the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck after you play cost. Use up to 3 characters with X or lower total power from among them and put them into the clock in any order that's uncancelable damage, and then put the rest in the waiting room. X is equal to the power of this card. So if you have this card down, you have the Draken over there, it's a 15, that's 11-5. You have the 3/2 in the back row, that's 13-5. That's your opponent basically has to reveal 2 level 3s to not take 3 damage. More often than not, this card's going to deal 2 damage, uncancelable. But that's why it has such a steep cost, because the chances that you deal 3 uncancelable damage is pretty high, unless your opponent either reveals a climax or reveals kills 2 level 3s that are both 10k. But this card can get like pretty big too, even past that if your opponent has the resources to dump into it. You can like bounce the standby card to give it another 1k, things like that. So you have a way to climb this card up to like 14, 5, 16. You have like double Draken after like standby triggers or something. So it can get pretty out of control. And of course, you know, everybody loves uncancelable damage. That stuff ends games, but it has a very steep cost to compensate. So definitely keep that in mind. You're definitely like an 8 standby deck that's playing very traditionally, but like you are building up stock to go off with this Mikey. He doesn't need to reverse, but he does have to make it to the end of his attack, so keep that in mind. And I think that's it for this deck, Andy. Any other thoughts?
I think it's a nice, interesting take on like an 8 standby deck, right? Definitely a different 8 stand. How should I put it? Like a different strategy than a lot of other standby decks will take, right? You're not really running a ton of backups for your characters in this deck, but you're really like trying to like just generate more stock and build up resources for your finisher still. So a very unique standby deck. Want to shout out Ryan Wibberley from Strictly Broken. This is his deck that he let us borrow to use for this deck tech. It's a very solid list. Definitely recommend you try it out if you want to try something a little bit different with Tokyo Revengers. This was like the de facto meta list in Japan for a long time before the new Split Soul stuff was discovered as well. So definitely a good place to start with for Tokyo Revengers if you don't want to play the Split Soul deck.
All right, Andy, let us know about your baby here. What is this?
Yeah, sure. So I talked about a little bit of the Split Soul stuff before. This is kind of has some similarities and some differences to that. So this is my 8 pants deck. This is probably what I've played around with and tweaked the most with Tokyo Revengers, like my starting point, and what I think is probably one of the strongest things you can do with the set. Yeah, just going through it. The same Ricky and Takamichi that goes to memory as all the other decks. Those are really good cards. I don't think I really need to say too much more on those. 4 copies of the Takamichi that will give you a clock to give yourself a free stock when you play it. Since the finisher is super expensive in this deck, costing a whopping 8 stock at the end of attack to use the effect, we need to be generating a lot of stock throughout the course of the game. This is a card that can help us generate that extra little bit of stock we need at the end of the game to be able to go off. So that's why I'm running the full 4 copies here. And then some level 0s that might not have seen in a lot of other Tokyo Revengers decks. Good cards that just don't really have room in most builds, but we're kind of using these typical cards that you see in a lot of builds, but they have unusual applications, I should say, for this deck. Since the end goal of the deck is to have 8 stock at the end of the attack with Baji, and then you need to have like 3 extra hand to discard, and you need a full field. So this Clean Cut, for example, is a card that generally would encourage you to like try field in like the early stages of the game, and then kind of falls off. Clean Cut's not really being as good throughout the game, but throughout the game, this kind of lets us play a little bit more conservatively with our field and with our hand, being able to just like have an open spot in our back row and be able to like swing with this and snipe off one of our opponent's weak lanes. In level 1, level 2, whenever our opponent just has a level 0 up front, if they're not playing a standby deck, anytime we can snipe a reverse with this and pull something to the back row to save it, this is one extra resource that we have to go off with at the end of the game. And it's a card that's level 0, so you can always pick it up with the cigarettes event or on any sort of search effect. So it's a card that's definitely overperformed and exceeded my expectations. And it's something that I find myself salvaging or searching quite often in this deck. 2 copies of the Mitsuya coin flip. He gets power when you play him, so he swings for 3,000, so good early on. And during your opponent's draw phase, you mill the top 2 cards of your deck, and if there's a level 2 or higher card among them, he pops back to your hand. Another way that we can help like plus and conserve our hand throughout the game to help have the resources to go off at the end for the finisher turn. This used to be I used to be running the Pants Assist in this slot, but found out that the Pants Assist really didn't do much for the deck at all. With the level 1 combo being like a mash combo where you discard a card on attack and then look at 4 cards and take 2, you have already a lot of built-in ways to get triggers that are like getting stuck in your hand, like those pants that are flooding your hand out of your hand. You already have a good avenue turn those into other cards if you need to. So Pants Assist really was not that necessary, and the 500 power pump was not that relevant. So that's why I switched it to this card to be able to help us meet our hand requirements at the end of the game and just give us another good starter in the deck. And then rounding out level 0s, 2 copies of the Baji Brainstorm. He's just a search brainstorm. Rather would have the selection option with this than the look at top 3 cards on the yellow Brainstorm, since we already have a lot of top checking effects in this deck. So definitely valued the selectivity of the search Brainstorm, and he also, when you play Climax, will give you a filter effect to draw and discard on reverse. Into level 1s, we are running the Kazutora combo. He gets 500 power for each character on your field, counting himself when you play him. So on a full board, he will get 2,500 power, going up to 7,000 and 8,000 with the Climax. And then Climax combo, when you attack, you discard a card from your hand on attack, and can be anything. It can be a level 3 character that you can't play yet. It can be a Climax, can be whatever. Then you look at up to 4 cards from your deck, take up to 2 characters or amulet events, which is other blue level 1 event card here, and then do your trigger and hit them for damage. So nice uninteractable plussing combo at level 1, and lets us filter out cards that are getting stuck in our hand, or some of the more niche cards that might not have applications in every matchup depending on how the game is going. Like this next card, which is a familiar face if you've been watching some of our other deck techs and meta snapshots and stuff recently, is the Chifuyu Dual Laner. This card gets 4,000 power if you have 1 or less other characters in your center stage, so if it's just him and someone else, hopefully another copy of himself. And then beginning of your attack step, if you have 2 characters in your front row, you choose him and the other character, and they each get the ability, when they attack, you get to choose a character in your waiting room and stock it. So the big play here is you use 2 Chifuyus, and you're only getting 2 attacks the turn you do this, but you are generating 6 stock in total, because they each give the effect to themselves and their partner. So each will swing, generate 2 stock from waiting room, trigger. The next one will swing, give you 2 clean stock from waiting room, and then trigger. But unlike those other dual laner decks that are just all in on the combo, and have some built-in weaknesses in a sense, for many reasons. The fact that you can only ever attack twice a turn, the fact that you just generate a mountain of stock and then are susceptible to stock swap, the fact that your opponent can just slow roll you back. Something that actually Dean talked about in Burn One's most recent video, I believe, about like ways to counteract and combat the Tokyo Revenger combo deck. So I guess I'd say a reason you'd play this 8 pants deck is if you like that playstyle of like building a bunch of resources, you can still, for the Baji finisher, you can still do that with this deck, but the name of the game here is not to be playing dual laners every single turn, but rather I just want to take a single turn of dual laners at some point in the game. If I can get it off at level 1 before my refresh and generate a bunch of clean stock, that's great. But ideally, I would probably be doing it, trying to take the dual laner turn at level 2. As this, because I'm only playing down 2 cards and swinging twice, allows me to conserve my hand for my finisher, and generate all that stock that I'm going to end up needing for the finisher anyway. And the fact that I'm only doing 2 attacks means that I'm throttling my damage going into my kill turn, so I'm still probably going to hit level 3 before my opponent, because the Chifuyus on their own are not going to likely level your opponent up. So you still get to hit level 3 first, like you would with the all-in version, the all-in combo version of the deck. But you can still take those big plays, but you're not locked into that strategy. You can kind of pick and choose how you want to approach the game, and you can attack multiple times a turn when you need to. So I think this is just, and in my testing, it's been very good actually. And it kind of just goes to show that you don't have to play the all-in dual laners deck to be able to utilize these dual laner sort of cards. You can kind of shoehorn them in, and not be as all in on it.
I think if you get
what are your thoughts on that, Carmen?
if you get like a second level 1 turn, like you don't beat on your deck, right? Because there's a lot of climaxes in it. You like stop with the Kazutora, like the second you get 2 playables. You like cancel once or twice and stay at 1, and you respond to your opponent after you now have like 4 to 5 stock by generating 6 and refreshing. Like that's disgusting. And then it also like, there's always those plays where it's like, like maybe I should throttle my opponent at 2 so they can't pop off on me because like I'm not ready to go or something. Well, you know what a great way to like throttle your opponent while also generating resources? Playing down the dual laners. So I think it's a really valid and super cool strategy. I kind of want to mess with it myself. I gotta make yet another TCG player order for more Tokyo Revengers cards.
Yeah, I guess so. Everything's cheap right now, though. I guess one other note about the dual laner, you can split them in this deck too. I was originally running 4 copies of the Chifuyu and 1 copy of the Baji, just so, in those games where I really needed to build up a bunch of extra hand for the finisher, if I wasn't able to get my level 1 combo off, let's say, or I already had a lot of stock and just wanted to kind of split how I'm getting stuff, like get some hand and some stock, you can run one of the Baji to open up that option for yourself. But I found more often than not, I was good on hand. It was just kind of needing extra stock at the end, because the level 1 one combo is nice and loopable in the sense that when you're doing like the top checking effect with your level 1 combo, you can grab the amulet event, which is just a vanilla cigarettes event. So if your Kazutora dies on the swing back, you can use the amulet, get the Kazutora back, and then if you triggered a pants on the previous turn, you added the pants back to your hand and are ready to combo again. And again, like I said, since we're not really going for the Chief of You dual laners like every single turn, if we end up with like extra copies of that card in our hand, it's a very good target to ditch with the Kazutora for the mash top check 4 effect. But anyway, yeah, I think we've talked enough about that here. Moving on, 1 copy of the Adachi. He's kind of there just as some extra yellow fix for the deck since we are kind of greedy colors here. So some extra yellow fix is nice for the end of the game, as well as being an easy card to pick up off the amulet, as we'll probably hit at least level 1 worth of cards to be able to pick up. And just a nice way to help deal with standby decks and whatnot. And 3 copies of the amulet, just cigarettes event. A deck building trap that, I think, could fall into with this. And I mean, the choice deck's kind of the same way in that sense. You don't need to run 4 copies of the amulet just because your level 1 combo lists the card on it. You can run 4 copies of this amulet, or you could run 0. These are definitely flex spots in the deck that you cut for other things if you needed. But I think with the Kazutora combo at level 1 not being the most selective, kind of having to just pick cards from the top of your deck, this is a nice wild card in a sense to be able to hit off that in a sense. So instead of adding like just a level 0 or a level 1 that might not be that useful on your next turn, you can kind of take the amulet and then re-roll it next turn. So it's a good wild card to take off your level 1 combo. So I think it's definitely still valuable to have in the deck. And also the cards that we need access to throughout the game, whether it's grabbing back another level 1 combo for another combo turn, grabbing another dual laner that we didn't draw into earlier, or like even going into like our kill turn, we can grab any of our utility level 0s with it, grabbing our Ricky to be able to use some of our extra stock to generate us, to occupy a slot on the field and then generate us a card back to our hand to discard later on, or grabbing a Takamichi clock and get a free stock just to help ramp our stock at the end of the game if we need it. It just very nicely grabs any of like whatever piece of like combo setup we need. On to level 2s, we have a new face here. This is the Mitsuya Box Topper promo. A card that I've not really seen anyone else play, but again has been a huge overperformer. When he attacks, if you have 4 or more other revenge characters, you choose one of your characters and give it 2 souls for the turn, and he has an act ability where I can pay 1 as much as I want to give him a soul for each stock I pay. This card is in the deck as a necessary evil. Because I'm going all in on the Baji combo at top end, that combo requires me to have like a full field, and he doesn't really get very big. So if my opponent has like a memory kick counter or a tap counter or any way that they can like really interact with me, they can kind of just shut off my whole combo. And this level 2 is the most cost efficient way to enable a bunch of side attacks for the deck. The other card that kind of fills a spot is the level 3 Kazutora and Ina assist, which was in the standby deck and this deck as well. But I think this card's just a lot more versatile in its application for the fact that it is cost efficient. It's only costing 1 to play in the games where we did not build a mountain of stock. Because again, remember, that's not the main goal here, like the other dual laner deck. But in the games where we did generate a lot of stock and have a ton of stock to use on our kill turn, he's very good at modulating his own soul. If you can like play him down and get a couple soul pumps on him, that puts him at 3 soul for a side attack, and then he attacks, he gives your other lane, your other non-Baji 2 soul, so that can get a profitable side attack, and then you have your final lane you can swing in with the Baji unopposed. So the ability to just allow you to kind of play around tap counter and memory kick counter and just enable side attacks for your whole field with a card that is cost efficient at only costing 1 stock and being a good stock stink in the games where you did generate a lot of stock means there's a high floor and a high ceiling on this card, and it's been a big overperformer. On to level 3s, 2 copies of the early play healer. Kind of have to like pick and choose when you want to do this with this deck. You don't necessarily want to be spending like the sacrificing cards on your field every game, since we do have a full field condition at the end, but refunding the stock on it is nice. So always good to have like an option to early play and heal in deck. this is the only healer we have. So yeah, we've talked about this card a lot already. So I'll just move on to the more interesting stuff here. Talking about the Baji combo. This is it. This is why we've been building all the stock all game and setting up our god board here. When he is placed on the stage from your hand, you can pay 1 and salvage a climax. So he will always have the ability to grab the climax for his climax combo. And even if you already have the climax in your hand for the combo, you might still want to pay 1 to add a climax back to your hand, because we have an effect that at the end of his attack we have to discard 3 cards, so that can help us hit a critical mass of cards in hand to initiate the combo, and pay 8. So we need to have 5 stock going into our attack step here and swing with him last.
And we gotta sack our whole field.
Yep.
And we gotta sack our climax.
Yep.
Gotta get rid of everything.
Gotta get rid of everything. Putting all our fate in this last attack, right?
Yeah.
Probably means something to the show. I don't know.
Well, the climaxes will entrust everything to you, and you better hope they die after this.
Yep, exactly. And they probably will if you get the combo off, because end of his attack, pay 8, ditch 3, sacrifice your climax, marker every single card on your field underneath him, and then with a full field. So you'll have this Baji with 4 markers under him, and then take a Kid's Meal Mikey, which is his neck card from your waiting room, and put it on top of this Baji as the top card, I guess. So you'll end up with this Mikey with 5 markers under him for your final attack. And when he attacks, you send all of your markers from under him to the bottom of your deck. You burn your opponent 1 for each marker. So you crescendo to this grand finale where you swing with this Mikey and you burn your opponent for 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and then you swing for 2 or 3 depending what you trigger. So you absolutely just machine gun your opponent down with small damage at the end of the game. If they've eaten any of your other attacks for 2 or 3 earlier in the turn, and they're somewhere in mid to even low level 3, they're just dead. And even if we have to play a Kid's Meal Mikey from our hand, he is our off finisher as well. Because when you play him from your hand, you also get a marker. So he won't be machine gunning your opponent down, but if he is in one of our other lanes, you at least get to burn for 1 on attack, and does not cost us any additional resources.
Depends how well your game's going as well. You can get to that full not board with this deck, I'm sure, 1 or 2 times. Your threshold for going to attacks with just Baji, Resolve Baji, is 5. You have to leave 5 stock. You also have to have a Mikey available at the end of his attack, an additional Mikey. The Mikey cannot be on your board. He can be in your hand if you intend to ditch it. He can be in your stock, but he can't be in your deck. He has to be available in the grave at the end of Baji's attack. Again, the Baji has to make it to the end of his attack, as well as every card on your board has to make it to the end of the attack. But if you can add 2 to that threshold, for every 2 that you can add, you can play an additional Mikey. And if you have a way to either, deal with your opponent's board, or a way where your opponent doesn't have their memory kick counter or something like that, being able to, with 11 stock, I believe it is, Mikey, Baji, you pay 6. You need 12. You need 12 stock if you're intended to pay 1 with the Baji. You would be able to play Mikey, Baji the same way the Split Soul deck does with this deck. Because I think hitting 12 stock if you get a turn of generating 6 isn't that unreasonable. It's mostly going to be, did you have the time to sculpt Baji, Mikey?
Yeah, you definitely gotta play off the cuff a little bit with this one, because again, unlike the Split Soul deck where you are generating a bajillion stock every single game and just kind of running with a full hand all game, with this deck, we're a typical 1K1 deck. We're going to be generating card advantage with our level 1 combo, but then probably losing our board on the way back. So, and since we need a full field for the combo, this kind of gets back to what I said at the beginning, where you have to use some of your standard level 0 cards in non-standard ways, using your clean cut to just conserve something for a later turn, maybe even going, at level 1, play your dual laner down on a turn when you're swinging with 3 cards, and then use the clean cut to cut your dual laner to your back row, and then set up your dual laner turn next turn that way. One of the cheeky little plays you can do, but anything you can do to be efficient and just save a resource is invaluable to this deck, or just to generate a resource. So yeah, using your clean cut to just save cards throughout the game, be able to reuse them, or something I found myself doing as well is in the games when I have a lot of stock, using the Ricky at the end stages of the game to be able to just help generate the critical mass of cards we need on field and in hand. You can Ricky for another Ricky, play that Ricky and grab something else, and the Hinatas are then occupying 2 spots on your field, which is just what you need them to do to help meet the full field condition. So you can get really creative with this deck. It definitely rewards competent pilots for sure.
And what's this last Draken here? Seeing the rest of these level 3s.
Yeah. Getting into the auxiliary level 3s here, we have again the 2000 assist card. Don't really care at all really about the power for the most part, but like the Mitsuya level 2, it is a way to open up a slot on our opponent's field and enable us to... It is another way to play around memory kick, tap counters, or whatever by opening up lane. The Chifu for some dig power, and then the final card that we haven't seen here is the Draken, level 3 Draken. He, on play, look at X cards from the top of your deck, add one of them to your hand, X the number of your characters, and on attack, you can discard 2 to mill 7 and burn your opponent X equal number of climaxes you hit. So I guess you can consider this maybe like if you are running really hot in a game and have a ton of resources going into your last turn, instead of playing a bunch of Mikey's down and burning for 1, you go for like this Draken and he refunds you a card, and then you can have discard 2 on attack to like get a burn effect. But it's there as like an off finisher when the games are running hot, and just a way to dig, because like Carmen mentioned in the standby deck, you really don't have a whole lot of dig power for climaxes or for anything in general in this set. So yeah, good dig option to have.
It seems cool. It's a cool take. I definitely want to try something like this, like a more traditional deck that uses the dual laners a little bit. Because as a deck like the dual laners becomes more popular and people learn how to play against it, it can become frustrating to play and not something you'd want to bring to your locals all the time if you have locals a lot, because people don't really like playing into it either. So not that means anything for like a tournament or a shop challenge, like a regional, but your locals are hopefully your friends and acquaintances. You don't want to be frustrating people tearing their hair out at this kind of deck.
Yeah, I guess my closing thought in that regard is if you like the Split Soul deck and want to play a version of it that's less all in but can still hit some of the same highs, this is like a good option to check out.
Seems really fun too. Like, it's more normal. You get all the cool parts.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well,
yeah, that's it. We covered a lot of Tokyo Revengers decks here. 8 choice, 8 standby, 8 pants. Any other content you want to shout out coming up, Carmen?
I was just gonna know we're probably not gonna actually go over the Split Soul deck. Enough other channels have gone over it to death now. We've shouted them out. Yeah. Well, yeah. I can link to out to, I believe it was Fred. They all did them. Tressa's Iron City Games, Connor, and as well as Darcy. They all have dual laner list profiles out there. I can link those in the description, but we're not going to cover that. We wanted to go over the other decks since everybody kind of went all in on that one.
Yeah, I think there's all the decks we mentioned here today, I think are all like really viable and all like competent, strong options you could play for Tokyo Revengers. And definitely surprised that no one covered like any of them.
Yeah, well, they covered them. It was just it wasn't that other channels didn't cover them. I know Tressa's covered some of them, or Connor covered a bunch of them actually. It was more just they were all kind of swept under the rug as the other one came to prominence. So kind of fell off. So we'll bring it back to the forefront again. But in terms of upcoming content, the match commentary was pretty well received. There was one or two good games from our shop challenge that we have recorded, where we can make sure that we have both players that were in the match in there to talk about it. I know that was a requested thing about the match commentary, which is what we wanted to do. It just wasn't possible scheduling at that time. So maybe we'll do that next week. Of course, we're gonna have Chicago and Toronto regionals, what we'll be at. And yeah, more set reviews. If AOT's out in time, we'll do a live stream. But more than likely it won't be, and it'll be the week after due to just how the database is. If Bushi doesn't put it out on the official database, we cannot create the slideshow. It just is what it is. But I think that's it. Andy, you got anything else in the close?
No, that's it, man.
All right, Pittsburgh White Sports signing off. We'll see you all in the next one.